Someone once said, if your voice is loud, some people will listen. But if your message is strong, everyone will pay attention. Hi everyone, welcome to channel, and today I have an inspiring story for you.
Along dusty roads, a saint walked in silence. His robe faded with time, his feet hardened by countless miles. He had no home, no piece of land to call his own. From peaceful villages to bustling towns, he carried his wisdom and teachings, planting the seeds of enlightenment in the hearts of those who listened. But no matter how vast his spirit was, his body remained limited. Each night, as the moon cast its glow over desolate fields, he sought shelter under a tree or beneath a stranger's roof. Sometimes he wondered, if only I had a small hut, a place to rest, perhaps I wouldn't have to wander endlessly. Maybe I could stay in one place, reflect, and teach more deeply. It wasn't greed, it was a simple yearning, a modest wish for a corner of the world where he could pause, where his mission could take root without the burden of constant travel. But since the day he had renounced the material world, he had never settled anywhere. Was this his destiny, to remain a traveler forever? Then, one day, he heard of a generous king, a ruler who granted wishes without hesitation. Perhaps, just perhaps, this king would give him a small piece of land, a place where he could continue his life's work without wandering endlessly. With a glimmer of hope in his heart, the saint set off to meet the king. The door of hope from the generous king. As the saint entered the kingdom, his eyes wandered over the bustling streets, filled with people whose faces shone with faith and gratitude. Everywhere, they spoke of the king with deep respect and admiration. They said he was a rare and noble ruler, one who gave freely without hesitation. Whether it was a starving beggar seeking a meal or a wealthy merchant hoping for more land, all who came before him with a sincere request never left empty-handed. Hearing these words, the saint's heart stirred with a glimmer of hope. A ruler so generous, perhaps he would not deny a humble request for a small piece of land, not for wealth, not for power, but simply for a place to rest and continue spreading wisdom. After years of wandering, he felt it was time to have a place not to possess, but to nurture the seeds of enlightenment more deeply. Following the villagers' stories, the saint made his way to the royal palace. Outside its grand gates, a long line of people waited patiently, each carrying a wish, a plea. Under the bright sun, the king sat on his throne, listening to one person after another, granting their desires with an open heart. Watching this, the saint couldn't help but smile. Could this be my chance? He wondered, with hope swelling in his chest. He stepped forward, waiting for his turn to stand before the great king. The rise of greed standing before the grand throne, the saint bowed respectfully. The king, with a warm smile, spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Wise one, what is it that you desire?" The saint lifted his gaze, his voice humble and sincere. "Your Majesty, I ask only for a small piece of land to build a simple hut, a place to rest and continue my teachings." The king nodded, but did not immediately grant the request. Instead, he made an unexpected proposal. "I will give you as much land as you can walk across before the sun sets. But there is one condition: you must return to this palace before sundown. If you fail, you will lose everything." The saint stood still, processing the offer. This was an incredible opportunity. He thought to himself, "I only need to walk a little to claim enough land for a hut. But if I go a bit farther, I could build an ashram. And if I walk even faster, I could claim a vast land where many could gather to learn." That thought took root in his mind, growing stronger with each passing second. At first, he walked at a steady, measured pace. But soon, an insatiable urge crept in. "If I run, I'll get even more," he reasoned. Ignoring the cautious voices of the king's attendants, the saint picked up his pace. His steps turned into strides, his strides into a full sprint. He ran not for survival, not for enlightenment, but for more, always more. But what he failed to realize was that, in that very moment, he had unknowingly entered the most dangerous race of his life. For the price of greed. The sun began to dip, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange. The saint's breath came in ragged gasps, his legs heavy with exhaustion. Yet he couldn't stop. The more land he claimed, the farther he was from the palace behind him. The king's horsemen rode fast, calling out as they held out water for him. "Wise one, stop, rest, return before it's too late." But the saint shook his head, his eyes locked on the horizon. "Just a little more. If I can enclose this entire field, it will become a great center for learning. Just a little more effort." But then, the sun began its final descent. A sudden panic gripped his heart. He had lost track of time. Fear rushed through his veins as he turned and sprinted back toward the palace. Sweat poured from his body. His legs trembled. His heart pounded wildly in his chest. The land, the vast, endless land, no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered now was reaching the palace before the sun disappeared. As the sky darkened, the palace finally came into view. His breath was short, his body drained, but he pushed himself forward with every last ounce of strength. And just as his feet crossed the palace gates, the sun slipped beyond the horizon. The saint collapsed, his vision blurred, his lungs desperate for air. But it was too late. With a weary, faint smile on his lips, he took his final breath, falling lifelessly upon the very land he had sacrificed everything to claim. The final lesson. The king stood in silence, looking down at the saint who had collapsed before his throne. The wind whispered through the palace courtyard, carrying specks of golden dust into the fading light. With a heavy heart, the king sighed and spoke in a solemn voice. What use is vast land if, in the end, you cannot even hold onto your own life? The crowd around him remained still, their faces reflecting the weight of what they had just witnessed. They had seen the saint's journey from hope to ambition, from desire to greed, and finally to his downfall. He had every chance to stop, to be content, but he had not. And when he finally realized what truly mattered, it was already too late. The saint's story was not just his own tragedy, it was a mirror reflecting the lives of so many. We chase wealth, status, and success, always believing that just a little more will bring us happiness. But like the saint, we keep running until exhaustion, until we finally see that we have spent our lives chasing shadows, missing the true treasures of existence. Fulfillment is not found in how much we accumulate, but in our ability to pause and appreciate what we already have. Life is too short to be spent in an endless race. The king bowed his head and ordered that the saint be buried on the very land he had given everything to claim, but in the end, none of it belonged to him. All he needed was a small piece, just enough for his grave.